Hello everybody and welcome back to Newegg TV. I'm Steve and today I'm going to do an overview on this full tower chassis from Rosewill. In fact, it's a very special full tower chassis. It actually has a dual PSU design, but more on that in just a moment. This is the Rise and the Rise Glow. So I figured we'll start off with the accessories first. There's not very many, but I'll be very brief about it. So we do have some information here telling you how to remove the filters both on the front and the top. They both require a screw that's found on the inside of the chassis. And moving right along, we do have the user manual as well. I'll open that up so you guys get an idea of what's inside. Just a pretty basic manual here, but it's important if you don't know what you're doing or to get a little information about the Rise chassis. Then, of course, they're providing some hardware screws as well, including one of the small little fasteners for tightening down the motherboard standoffs, small little screw head here, small socket, I should say, with a screw head on the other end. And then, of course, we have some zip ties. And now for the 360-degree view of Rosewill's Rise chassis. This, of course, being the Rise, I'm going to start with this one first, and then we'll go over to the Rise Glow. As you can see, it is a black chassis. It's using steel as the main component for the chassis and plastic for the front bezel as well as the top. And if I go to the front here, you can actually get a closer look at the bays on the very front. So we have two 5¼ bays and one inlet for a 3½ bay, so it's kind of technically has a little adapter there for you. And then if we look below that, we do have just a dust filter, I should say, on the very front that we showed you at the very beginning of this video. But I'm going to spin it around to the back so we can get a look at the rear of this chassis. And one of the main features of this particular case, and that is that it actually has two locations for the PSU, one here at the top and one at the bottom we'll look at in just a moment. Of course, I have two grommets here for utilization of putting some cooling outside of the system and running the water into it, or whatever you end up using. And then if we look down below that, we do have a 140mm fan here, and below that even we do have all the expansion slot covers, including one that is set horizontally so that you could hook up maybe one other set of outs from your I/O of your motherboard. In this particular case, probably, depending on what you end up getting, USB or FireWire if you use that, probably not. And then at the very, very bottom, we do finally have the last location, the most typical location for a power supply, and that would be at the very bottom. All right, and as you can see, we're now looking at the very top of the chassis, and that's where we have one of those filters that I mentioned before that is removable. Of course, you're going to have to go inside the chassis and unscrew it first before it is, but yes, it is still removable. Then we have our USB ports here on the very top towards the front, as well as our, well, I should say, 4 USB 2.0 and 2 USB 3.0, as well as our 3.5mm audio connectors as well for our microphone, as well as the headset. Then we have the reset button and the power button, both that are lit. And on the bottom we find one of the final filters that you can remove. This one's actually much easier to remove in order to clean the actual filter that would go to the bottom PSU if you ended up installing your PSU there at the bottom location. And then we have 4 thumb screws that can be used to unscrew and move the hard drive cage that is inside the chassis. So speaking of inside, let's go take a look. All right, and I've already removed this panel to make this shot a little bit easier for you guys to follow. It is a tinted polycarbonate window, which means that it basically is just slightly tinted so that everything on the inside might not be as bright, the LEDs and everything else, but otherwise you can hopefully see between the yellow of the background of our studio here and what it looks like through the tint exactly how much it's tinted, or at least get an idea. But we're going to go ahead and take a closer look to the inside of this chassis, where I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about which form factors of motherboards that this chassis is going to support. So we have micro ATX, ATX, and extended ATX motherboards, so make sure that the motherboard you've purchased to use with this chassis will definitely work with those form factors. So we're going to go ahead and start at the very top. That's where I can talk to you a little bit about radiator options that you might have with this particular chassis, as well as cooling. Before I do that, I want to kind of hit on that main point that this is a dual PSU chassis, which means we can put a PSU here at the top, at the bottom, or in both locations. And you can see that the small little ledge here is actually what's going to be supporting that PSU. We also have a location here for a small 80mm fan. Should you decide to use that, obviously that means the PSU can't be there. But more about the top here. So we're looking at 120 or 140mm mounting point, as well as 240 or 280mm radiator mounting area. Now in terms of fans, that basically boils down to 240mm fans or 2 120mm fans, as well as having that dust filter that is up here. And it is removable once you remove the thumb screw. So I'm just going to move us down here to the front top. There you can see the back side of that 5¼ to 3½ inch adapter that I mentioned earlier in case you have a bay drive that might actually fit that. You have that option, or you can remove it entirely and just go with 2 5 1/4 bay drives. Now moving below that, we do have the 3 120 millimeter fans that are already installed. Obviously Rosewill fans here, you guys, but you could remove those should you desire to, and replace them with maybe a series of radiators you have, or at least one of a particular size. So you can use 120 millimeter or a 140, or you can go with a 240 or a 280, or a 360 millimeter rad. So that's actually excellent if you wanted to have multiple radiators in this particular system for multiple loops. That's going to be a benefit. Now moving down to the very bottom here, you can see the hard drive cage, the 4 screws, the 4 thumb screws at the bottom I've already removed, so I'm just going to pull that out really quick and just give you guys a quick look-see as to what they look like. So I'll remove these trays. You can see they're just small plastic trays. They already have the buds on the inside, or the little nubs, I should say, on the inside to hold the 3.5 inch drives. But of course we also have the areas here, the 2 or the 4 little small screw holes for 2.5 inch drives. So I'll go ahead and slide that back inside. It does clip in place. You have 2 of those. And then we have a smaller metal area that the another 2.5 inch drive can actually fit into. Let me move that out of the way. Show you a little bit more down here at the bottom. We do have a strap that's going to protect your hands, or protect the PSU and hold it steady. And of course that's going to be if you installed the PSU in the typical or orthodox position here down at the bottom. And we do have a couple cables here, and that's for the I/O. I'm just going to kind of hold them up briefly and go down the line, because I'm sure you guys have seen these before. So we have USB 3.0 front header. That's excellent. You're going to have to remember to make sure that your motherboard actually supports that. Otherwise, you can get smaller adapters, an optional purchase you can get somewhere else, that actually changes it from the 3.0 header down to 2 USB 2.0 or a single USB 2.0 header. Then, of course, we have a couple more USB 2.0 headers, 2 more to be specific. And then we have the standard connections that you'd use for both your switches as well as your LEDs on the front panel. And then we have an HD audio connector as well as AC97 for audio. And finally, here we are at the back of the interior of the chassis. Of course, we have all of our expansion slot covers here, as well as the very top here we have the 140 millimeter fan that is actually replaceable. It does come pre-installed, obviously, but you can replace that with a radiator. We're looking at 120 millimeter or a 140 millimeter rad that would fit in its place. And now we've made our way to the back of the chassis. I've already removed the panel, so you can get a good look at that motherboard base plate. And we're going to take a closer look at the very top first. So you can see here's all the cables and where they'd be running to the front I/O, as well as all the buttons there in the front. And you can see where all of your wire management is going to go through those grommets. Also, we'll find here a very small kind of a splitter for all the power. It's going to take a 4-pin Molex on the end and split it to 9 different 3-pin power outs for all of your different fans. Now, obviously, it's not PWM, but if you just wanted a dummy way to control the fans and just give them all power, you actually could do that in case your motherboard maybe has a limitation as to how many fans that you'd have. Obviously though, if your motherboard does, like perhaps one of the Asus motherboards, the fan control that's actually done inside on the motherboard is going to be much better than something just like this. But this is great to have in case your motherboard doesn't already have that. So then moving down the line here, we can see we also have 2 tie standoff areas here that you can actually tie off on different your wire management as you get the wires in and make it look nice and clean. But as we move down towards the bottom of the chassis here, we'll notice more of those grommets that we saw earlier. But one of the better features of the back here is actually 2 locations for 2 more 2.5 inch drives to be attached here at the bottom. Obviously, you're going to unscrew these 2 screws to remove this plate and these 2 screws to remove this plate. Then you'll screw them into all 4 of the screws to the actual hard drive or SSD you're choosing, of course, then reattach them here. It's actually really clean to have them in the back once you get them installed, especially if you intend on never removing them again. And I think that pretty much covers it for the back, other than the actual spacing here that you're going to have for all of your cable management. That reminds me, we need to talk about all dimensions, but first off, that's 0.75 inches or 1.9 centimeters that you're going to have for it. So a little bit of room here in the back to work with, but definitely excellent that we have that. In terms of all the dimensions across the board, you're looking at 9.17 inches by 21.65 by 17.32. That's width, height, and depth. And then in centimeters, that's 23.3 by 55 by 44. And now we have the Rise Glow, and because there's only two primary differences between the Rise Glow and the Rise, I'm really starting out with the main two, which actually start with the interior of the chassis. So we have this large piece of metal here that's actually a quote unique hard drive expansion tray. It's going to allow you to install up to 4 2.5-inch or 4 3.5-inch drives. But let me start by saying that I've also already removed a total of 4 of the thumb screws, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom here, that keeps it attached. So then you'll take that off to see the actual location of the mounting screw area, the mounting patterns here for both the 2.5-inch as well as the 3.5-inch drives you'll be able to attach to it. Before you can actually screw into those though, you will have to remove a total of 2, 4, 6 Phillips head screws, and then you'll be able to remove this cover, which will allow you access to the back of this panel, which allows you to screw in those different hard drives. Now, the advantage of this hard drive expansion tray, I'm going to turn it slightly sideways so that you can see, if they're attached here where they're along flush with or parallel with this plate, they won't get in the way of these fans here in the background. So obviously that's going to mean more airflow through here, plus allowing you to attach up to 4 more hard drives or 4 more SSDs to your system. So there's a benefit to that. And the other main difference with the Glow is these 3 120mm fans that come pre-attached. They come with blue LEDs in them, so this way you're actually getting a little bit of lighting, some aesthetics. If you enjoy that type of thing, you're definitely going to want to go for the Rise Glow over the Rise. And that is going to conclude this overview, everybody. Thanks again for watching. I want to mention one more thing, and that is that the Rise and the Rise Glow, both full tower chassis from Rosewill, are going to come with a 1-year parts and labor warranty. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, which is www.youtube.com/Newegg. And until then, we will see you guys soon.